Hey, Warrior Saints. Happy Wednesday. Father Chris here. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you beautiful people with us. Man, it is a frustrating time to be alive. Probably like that all throughout history, but we probably feel right now like tension and, as Greg said yesterday, like dichotomy, man. Everything is split black and white, left and right. I mean, there's a lot of room for gray, but we don't seem to have the capacity to do so. And I was thinking a lot about it, like what's causing it? What's the perpetrator for, this angst that we all feel? And I know that it's a frustration that I feel and have felt, for a long time, and thought, well, how do I overcome that? How do I get through this angst? And before we go any further, make sure we continue this lesson, the only way to do that is by living a crucifixional life. That's why you got to visit warriorsaints.org. What I'm about to show you occurred in my Facebook feed. The first is from a relative. All right, before we pop it up there, it's from one of my relatives. And the second one is from a friend, high school friend that I went to school with. And they were back to back in my thread, literally back to back. Now, keep in mind, before we show up to you, I don't do much on Facebook. We teach every day, but I don't really interact. I like things once a blue moon. I rarely post anything personally from me other than our teachings. Like, I'm just not active on Facebook. And I say that because the way that their algorithms work is that it connects things, right? That if you interact and comment and like, that's what it pulls into your thread. That's how it keeps you all. You notice you may have 1,000 friends, but you see the same people over and over. That's how that algorithm works. What makes that important is that these two particular photos that I'm going to show you, they were back to back in my thread, both of whom I do not interact with on a regular basis. I love them both. Like I said, one's a relative, one's a high school friend, but I don't interact. So why would Facebook pull them into my thread? And I'll tell you why. First, let's look at the first one. This is, in light of the Second Amendment and the gun control and the shooting in Texas a couple of days ago where kids were killed. It was an incendiary statement that Planned Parenthood doesn't kill babies, guns do, or the NRA does, right? So, like, very hardcore on that position. It's someone who is pushing for pro-abortion and anti-guns, but then it was immediately followed with someone who is pro-life and pro-guns, when the very next picture says, guns aren't evil. It's people with broken minds, right? And so now all of a sudden you can see, like, what's going on there. It's the debate versus guns are bad. No, it's mental illness and all this kind of stuff. And I don't even care about the debate, like, at all, right? I have my opinions. You have yours. We all know what they are. Why in the algorithm of Facebook do that? And I'll tell you why, at least as I can understand it. Because when I saw them, I was angry immediately. The first one, I was, like, enraged. And then the second one, I was enraged-er. I was more enraged. Like, it was, and it hit me. I'm like, why am I so angry about an issue that, like, look, I'm not a politician, and forgive me if you don't agree with what I'm about to say, but this is all a silly fight. The Second Amendment's not going away, right? Like, so why do that? Why then get so angry over something that's not of any, in some sense, real value? The argument I'm talking about is not of real value. It's because they are trying to make me angry. Now, that does a couple of things, right? When I'm angry, what do? I click, right? When I'm angry or when I'm separated, what else do? I buy, right? So if you can keep your mind open to recognize that kind of stuff is designed to keep you on the edge of anger, hopefully then you will have a clear enough sight to be able to say, all right, what am I going to do about it, right? Remember this beautiful story. Greg talked about it yesterday from the Gospel of Luke. There's a man who's born blind, and he comes to Jesus and he wants something. And Christ says very simply, what do you want me to do? And he asks to receive his sight. Lord, let me receive my sight. Now, it's probable that he actually meant literally, maybe his eyes actually were blind, and he wanted to be able to see the world. But deeper is the sight that we have had blinded by all of this incendiary material out there, all this anger production and so on. And so, like, as we wonder why we're feeling so frustrated and why we feel so much angst, it's because we're really swallowing gallons and gallons of it on a daily dose, perhaps even an hourly or even moment by moment dose when we look at all of that kind of stuff. That's their goal. That's their push. And so we get frustrated by it. So how do we overcome it? The only way to do that, the only way to be like this blind man and have our eyes opened is not by the stuff in the world, but by the gospel of the cross of Jesus Christ, right? The only way to see clearly is to have a perpetual crucifixional attitude. Now remember, we use that word a lot, crucifixional. We made it up. I mean, we mimicked our Lord on the cross. We have to be crucifixional in our own lives. I've got to sacrifice my will so that there's like room in my heart and in my mind to put God's will. I've got to sacrifice my desires and my interests and maybe put them aside so there's room in my heart to help satisfy the needs and desires of others. Perhaps people who are really in need, not just like, my whiny needs, but true need with hunger and thirst or nakedness or whatever, loneliness, whatever it may be. To be able to see clearly, to actually be able to say, all right, I see what's happening in the world, and now I can know my role in it. And even more importantly, that I can become the best version of me as I interact and engage in this world. It's got to be done through the lens of the cross of Christ, that crucifixional sacrifice of self for God's will. It's the only way. Otherwise, we're just going to be contributing to the Facebook feeds with one incendiary quote after the other. And I use that word, and I've used it multiple times today, incendiary, because really, what does that stuff do? It ignites, it sparks a fire inside us, but it's not a good fire, and it's a fire that leaves us feeling with angst and suffering. And so if you want to follow that way, like there's a cost, right? It may feel good in the moment, but the cost is that lost feeling, that sense of, I'm not able to do the things I want or need to do. Do I have it in me to do the right things? Can I really be something spectacular, something magnificent, marvelous, excellent? That's the cost. If you want to see clearly, if you want to be able to look through that kind of stuff and to be able to analyze and say, all right, here's what's going on here and here's what's going on there, it's pretty simple. warriorsaints.org and subscribe to the Way of the Warrior Saint. Do it right now. That is it's going to grant you that freedom to be able to say, I can see. I may agree or disagree. I don't care where you stand on, the gun issue. That's not my concern, right? God forbid we lost lives, obviously. But that issue itself, it's up to you. But how do you see it clearly? How are you able to take the garbage away so that your brain and your mind and your heart are really looking clearly? You find it at warriorsaints.org. We've got an episode, a series actually, called See Clearly. And the whole point of See Clearly is to help us do that very thing. So if you're ready to be the best you that you can be, kind of leaving that mediocrity and that puppetry stuff behind, like no longer being a marionette for the powers of the world, pretty simple. warriorsaints.org. We'll be back tomorrow. Love you, beautiful people. And as always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.